Marcus had always been a man of routine. Every evening at 9 o'clock, he would take his German shepherd, Rex, for their final walk of the day through Riverside Park. The park was peaceful at night, with only the sound of crickets and the distant hum of traffic from the main road. It was his way of clearing his mind after long days at the construction site, where he worked as a supervisor. On this particular October evening, the air was crisp, and the full moon cast long shadows across the walking paths. Marcus pulled his jacket tighter as a cold breeze swept through the trees. Rex trotted beside him, occasionally stopping to investigate interesting scents along the way. They had been walking for about 20 minutes when Rex suddenly stopped and began whining softly. Marcus looked in the direction Rex was staring and saw a small figure huddled on a park bench about 50 feet away. As they got closer, he could see it was a young woman, probably in her early 20s, wearing only a thin sweater and jeans. She was shivering violently, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as she rocked back and forth. "Miss, are you all right?" Marcus called out softly, not wanting to startle her. The woman looked up, and even in the moonlight, Marcus could see the fear in her eyes. Her face was pale, and her lips had a slight blue tint from the cold. She had shoulder-length brown hair that was slightly disheveled, and her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. "I'm fine," she said quickly, but her voice was shaky and unconvincing. Marcus studied her for a moment. He had a daughter about her age, and his protective instincts kicked in immediately. This young woman was clearly not fine. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days, and she was dangerously cold. "You're shivering pretty badly," Marcus said gently, taking a step closer. "It's going to drop below freezing tonight. Do you have somewhere warm to go?" The woman hesitated, looking down at her hands. I don't really have anywhere to go right now." Marcus felt his heart sink. He had seen homeless people before, but something about this young woman seemed different. She didn't look like someone who had been living on the streets for long. Her clothes, while not expensive, were clean and in good condition. Her hands were soft, not the rough hands of someone who had been surviving outdoors. "What's your name?" Marcus asked, sitting down on the other end of the bench to make her feel less intimidated. "Sarah," she replied quietly. "I'm Marcus, and this is Rex," he said, gesturing to his dog who had settled down at his feet. "Sarah, I know you don't know me, but I can't leave you out here in the cold. Do you have any family or friends you can call?" Sarah shook her head, fresh tears forming in her eyes. "There's no one. I left home 3 days ago, and I can't go back. I thought I could figure something out, but I don't have any money left, and I don't know what to do." Marcus wanted to ask why she had left home, but he sensed it wasn't the right time. Instead, he focused on the immediate problem. This young woman needed help, and she needed it now. "Listen, Sarah, I live about 10 minutes from here. I have a guest room, and my daughter Lisa is away at college, so there's plenty of space. You can stay the night, get warm, have something to eat, and tomorrow we can figure out what your options are." Sarah looked at him with surprise and suspicion. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Marcus understood her hesitation. In today's world, a young woman had every right to be cautious about accepting help from a stranger, especially a man. "I have a daughter about your age," he explained. "If she were in your situation, I would hope someone would help her. I'm not asking for anything in return, and you can leave any time you want. I just can't drive away knowing you're going to freeze out here tonight." Sarah studied his face in the moonlight. There was something genuine and kind about this man. She had always been good at reading people, and despite her current vulnerable situation, her instincts told her that Marcus was trustworthy. "I don't want to be any trouble," she said softly. "You won't be any trouble at all," Marcus assured her. "Come on. Let's get you somewhere warm." As they walked toward Marcus's truck, Sarah found herself opening up slightly. "I've been sleeping in the park for 3 nights now. During the day, I go to the library or coffee shops to stay warm, but at night," she trailed off. "Well, you don't have to do that anymore tonight," Marcus said firmly. "Tomorrow we can talk about longer-term solutions, but for now, Let's just focus on getting you fed and warm. The drive to Marcus's house was quiet, except for the soft sounds of the heater running and Rex panting lightly in the back seat. Sarah stared out the window at the suburban neighborhoods they passed through. She wondered what it would be like to have a normal life again, to not worry about where she would sleep or when she would eat next. Marcus's house was a modest two-story home with a well-maintained front yard. As they pulled into the driveway, Sarah noticed the warm yellow light glowing from the front windows. It looked like the kind of home she had dreamed of having someday. "Here we are," Marcus said, turning off the engine. "Let's get you inside and warmed up." As they approached the front door, Sarah suddenly stopped. "Marcus," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What is it, Sarah?" She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and vulnerability. "Only guard me if you'll remain tonight. I mean, I'm scared of being alone again. These past 3 nights have been the worst of my life. If you're going to help me, please don't leave me alone tonight. I know it sounds strange, but I just need to know someone is here." Marcus felt a tightness in his chest. This young woman had been through something traumatic, and she was reaching out for the most basic human need: the assurance that she wasn't alone. He thought of his daughter Lisa, and how he would want someone to comfort her if she were ever in such a frightening situation. "Sarah," he said gently, "I'm not going anywhere. This is my home, and you're safe here. I'll be right down the hall if you need anything. And Rex usually sleeps in the living room. You're not alone anymore." As they entered the house, Sarah was immediately struck by the warmth and coziness of Marcus's home. There were family photos on the walls, comfortable furniture, and the lingering smell of coffee and something that had been baked recently. It felt like a real home, something she hadn't experienced in a long time. "Let me show you to the guest room," Marcus said, leading her up the stairs. "There are fresh towels in the bathroom, and I'll find you something warm to sleep in. Are you hungry? I can make you something to eat." "I haven't eaten since yesterday morning," Sarah admitted, embarrassed. "Well, we'll fix that right now," Marcus said with determination. "You get settled in, take a hot shower if you want, and I'll have some food ready when you come back down." As Sarah stood in the doorway of the guest room, she felt overwhelmed by Marcus's kindness. The room was simple but comfortable, with a queen-sized bed covered in clean, soft-looking blankets. There was a small dresser, a reading chair by the window, and even some books on the nightstand. "Marcus," she called out as he was heading back downstairs. "Yes? Thank you. I don't know how to repay you for this." Marcus smiled warmly. "Sarah, sometimes we all need help. The only thing I ask is that when you're back on your feet someday, you help someone else who needs it. That's how the world gets a little bit better." As Marcus went downstairs to prepare food, he found himself thinking about what could have driven such a young woman to leave home and end up homeless. She seemed educated and well-spoken, and despite her current circumstances, there was a strength about her that impressed him. Whatever had happened to bring her to that park bench, he was glad he had found her when he did. In the kitchen, Marcus prepared a simple but nourishing meal of scrambled eggs, toast, and hot soup. He made extra portions, thinking that Sarah probably hadn't had a proper meal in days. As he cooked, Rex sat nearby, as if sensing that something important was happening in their normally quiet household. Upstairs, Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, still hardly believing that her luck had changed so dramatically. Just an hour ago, she had been preparing for another freezing night on a park bench, wondering if she would survive until morning. Now she was in a warm, safe house with a kind man who expected nothing from her except that she accept his help. She thought about the events that had led her to this moment. 3 days ago, her life had been completely different. She had been living with her boyfriend Jake in his apartment, working part-time at a bookstore while taking classes at the community college. She had thought she was building a future with someone she loved. But then she had discovered something about Jake that had shattered her world and forced her to make the hardest decision of her life. A gentle knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Sarah? I have some food ready downstairs whenever you're hungry," Marcus called through the door. "I'll be right down," she replied, grateful for the distraction from her painful memories. As she made her way downstairs, the smell of hot food made her stomach rumble loudly. She realized just how weak and hungry she had become over the past 3 days. Marcus had set a place for her at the kitchen table, and the sight of the steaming plate of food almost brought tears to her eyes. "This looks amazing," she said, sitting down eagerly. "It's nothing fancy, but it should help warm you up," Marcus replied, pouring her a glass of milk and sitting across from her with his own plate. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Sarah couldn't remember when food had tasted so good. The simple scrambled eggs and toast felt like the most luxurious meal she had ever eaten. Marcus watched her eat with quiet satisfaction, glad to see some color returning to her cheeks. "Can I ask what brought you to the park?" Marcus said gently after Sarah had finished most of her meal. Sarah set down her fork and took a deep breath. "I was living with my boyfriend. We had been together for almost 2 years. I thought we were going to get married someday. But 3 days ago, I came home early from work and found him with another woman in our bed." Marcus winced sympathetically. "I'm sorry, Sarah. That must have been devastating." "It wasn't just that he was cheating on me," Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger as she talked. "When I confronted him, he said terrible things. He said I was stupid for thinking he would ever marry someone like me, that I was just convenient until he found someone better. He told me to pack my things and get out. What about your family? Couldn't they help you?" Sarah's expression grew sad again. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 18. I don't have any siblings. And my grandparents passed away when I was younger. Jake knew I didn't have anywhere else to go. That's probably why he felt he could treat me the way he did." Marcus felt a surge of anger toward this Jake person who had treated Sarah so cruelly. "Did you try staying at a shelter?" "I went to one the first night, but it was full. The second night I tried another one. But—" She paused, looking uncomfortable. "There was a man there who kept bothering me, saying inappropriate things. I didn't feel safe, so I left. I've been in the park since then." Marcus shook his head. "Sarah, you've been through a lot, but you're safe now. Tomorrow we can look into your options. There might be assistance programs available, or maybe we can help you find a job and a place to stay." "Why are you being so kind to me?" Sarah asked, looking at him with wonder. "Most people would have just walked past someone like me." Marcus considered her question carefully. "My wife died 5 years ago from cancer," he said quietly. "After she passed, I went through a very dark time. I felt lost and alone, even though I had my daughter and my job. One day, when I was at my lowest point, a neighbor I barely knew brought me dinner and just sat with me while I talked about my grief. She didn't try to fix anything or give me advice. She just listened and made sure I wasn't alone that night." Sarah listened intently as Marcus continued. "That woman's kindness during my darkest hour changed something in me. She showed me that sometimes the most important thing we can do for another person is simply to be present when they need someone. Tonight, you needed someone to be present for you." "What was your wife like?" Sarah asked softly. Marcus smiled, his eyes growing warm with memory. "Margaret was the most compassionate person I ever knew. She volunteered at the animal shelter, helped elderly neighbors with their groceries, and always seemed to know when someone needed a friend. She would have brought you home tonight too, probably before I even noticed you were there." Sarah felt a deep respect for this man who had opened his home to a stranger in memory of his beloved wife. "She sounds like she was an amazing person." "She was," Marcus agreed. "And she taught me that we're all connected in ways we don't always see. Your situation tonight reminded me of something she used to say. We never know when we might be entertaining angels." As they finished their meal, Sarah felt a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the food or the heated house. For the first time in days, she felt hopeful about her future. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight she was safe, fed, and most importantly, not alone. "Marcus," she said as he began clearing the dishes, "you asked me to promise that when I'm back on my feet, I'll help someone else who needs it. I want you to know that's a promise I intend to keep." "I believe you will," Marcus replied with confidence. "Now, why don't you get some rest? Tomorrow we'll start figuring out your next steps." As Sarah made her way back upstairs, she felt truly hopeful for the first time in months. She had lost everything 3 days ago, but tonight she had found something she didn't even know she was looking for. Proof that there were still genuinely good people in the world, people who would help a stranger simply because it was the right thing to do. Sarah woke up the next morning to the smell of coffee and bacon drifting up from the kitchen. For a moment, she was disoriented, forgetting where she was. Then the events of the previous night came flooding back, and she smiled with relief. She was safe, warm, and about to have her first real breakfast in 4 days. After getting dressed in the same clothes from yesterday, she made her way downstairs to find Marcus at the stove, flipping pancakes while Rex sat hopefully nearby, clearly expecting to share in the feast. "Good morning, Sarah," Marcus said cheerfully. "I hope you slept well." "Better than I have in weeks," Sarah replied honestly. "Thank you so much for everything." "No need to thank me. Have a seat and I'll get you some breakfast. We have a lot to figure out today. But first, you need to eat." As they sat down to eat, Marcus pulled out a notepad, where he had already written down several ideas. "I've been thinking about your situation, and I have some suggestions. First, there's a women's resource center downtown that helps people in transitional housing situations. They might be able to help you find a safe place to stay while you get back on your feet." Sarah nodded, feeling grateful that Marcus was taking such an active interest in helping her. "That sounds good. I also need to find a job as soon as possible." "About that," Marcus said, "I talked to my foreman this morning, and we're looking for someone to help with office work at the construction company. It's not glamorous work, filing, answering phones, basic bookkeeping. But it pays decent and comes with health insurance after 90 days. Would you be interested?" Sarah's eyes lit up with excitement. "Are you serious?" "Yes, absolutely. I'm good with computers and I learn quickly." "Great." He said, "You can start tomorrow if you want. The only problem is transportation. The office is about 20 minutes from here by car." Sarah's face fell slightly. "I don't have a car. Jake's name was on the lease for mine. So when I left, I had to leave it behind too." Marcus had anticipated this problem. "Well, there's a bus route that goes pretty close to the job site. It would mean leaving here early and getting home late, but it's doable until you can save up for a car." "I'll take the bus," Sarah said immediately. "I'm not afraid of hard work or long days. I just need a chance." After breakfast, Marcus drove Sarah to the Women's Resource Center he had mentioned. The building was modest but welcoming, with a sign outside that read, "New Beginnings Women's Center." Inside, they met with a counselor named Patricia, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "Sarah, we see situations like yours more often than you might think," Patricia explained as they sat in her office. "The good news is that you have options. We have a transitional housing program that provides safe, affordable housing for up to 6 months while clients get back on their feet." Sarah felt a mix of relief and anxiety. "What does that involve?" "You would share a house with 3 other women who are in similar situations. Everyone has their own bedroom, and you share common areas like the kitchen and living room. The rent is based on your income, so it's very affordable. There are also support groups and job training programs if you're interested." Marcus squeezed Sarah's hand encouragingly. "That sounds perfect for you." "There is one challenge," Patricia continued. "We currently have a waiting list. Our next available spot won't be until the end of the month, which is about 3 weeks away." Sarah's heart sank. 3 weeks seemed like an eternity when she didn't have a permanent place to stay. She couldn't possibly impose on Marcus's hospitality for that long. "I understand if that's too long to wait," Patricia said gently. "We also have information about other temporary housing options." On the drive back to Marcus's house, Sarah was quiet, lost in thought about her options. Marcus sensed her worry and tried to reassure her. "Sarah, you know you're welcome to stay at my house until something opens up at the center, right?" "Marcus, I can't ask you to do that. You've already done so much for me." "You're not asking. I'm offering. Look, the house has been too quiet since Lisa went to college. Having you there doesn't bother me at all. Besides, if you start working tomorrow, you'll be contributing to groceries and household expenses." That evening, Marcus took Sarah shopping for some basic necessities. She protested that she didn't have money to pay him back. But Marcus insisted it was a loan that she could repay once she started earning money. They bought her a few changes of clothes, some personal care items, and a simple cell phone so she could stay in contact with potential employers and housing options. As they stood in line at the checkout, Sarah felt overwhelmed by Marcus's continued kindness. "I promise I'll pay you back every penny," she said earnestly. "I know you will," Marcus replied. "But Sarah, I want you to understand something. This isn't charity. I genuinely enjoy having you around. You're intelligent, you help with cooking and cleaning without being asked, and you're excellent company. You're not a burden." The next morning, Sarah started her new job. The construction office was small but busy, with workers constantly coming and going, and phones ringing throughout the day. Sarah threw herself into the work with enthusiasm, determined to prove that Marcus's faith in her was well placed. Her supervisor, Tom, was initially skeptical about hiring someone without experience, but Sarah's quick learning and positive attitude won him over quickly. "You're picking this up faster than the last 3 people we hired," he told her at the end of her first week. In the evenings, Sarah and Marcus developed a comfortable routine. She would take the bus home, help prepare dinner, and they would eat together while discussing their days. Marcus was impressed by Sarah's work ethic and determination. Despite everything she had been through, she maintained an optimistic outlook and never complained about her long days or temporary living situation. One evening, about 2 weeks after Sarah had started working, Marcus found her sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread out in front of her, looking frustrated. "What are you working on?" he asked. "I'm trying to figure out my budget for when I move to the transitional housing," Sarah explained. "Even with the reduced rent, I'm going to be cutting things pretty close. I won't have much left over for savings or emergencies." Marcus sat down across from her and looked at the numbers she had written down. "Have you thought about getting a part-time job in addition to your work at the office?" "Marcus, I've thought about it, but I don't know what I could do. Most part-time jobs are during the day when I'm already working, and I don't have a car to get around easily in the evenings." "What about online work?" Marcus suggested. "You're good with computers. Maybe you could do some freelance work in the evenings." Sarah's eyes brightened. "That's actually a great idea. I used to help my college classmates with their papers, and I'm pretty good at editing and proofreading. Maybe I could offer those services online." Over the next few days, Sarah researched freelance opportunities and set up profiles on several websites that connected freelancers with clients. Within a week, she had landed her first editing job, which paid her $50 for proofreading a small business's website content. "I can't believe someone actually hired me," she told Marcus excitedly as she showed him the payment notification on her phone. "I can believe it," Marcus replied. "You're smart, hardworking, and reliable. People recognize those qualities." As Sarah's confidence grew, she began to see a future for herself that extended beyond just surviving day to day. She started making plans for her life after the transitional housing program, including possibly returning to school to finish her degree. One evening, as they were preparing dinner together, Sarah brought up something that had been on her mind. "Marcus, I've been thinking about something Patricia said at the Women's Center. She mentioned that they're always looking for volunteers to help with new clients, especially people who have been through similar experiences. That sounds like something you'd be good at," Marcus said encouragingly. "I was thinking that maybe I could volunteer there once I'm more settled. You know, help other women who are going through what I went through." Patricia said that people who have been in similar situations often make the best counselors because they understand what it's really like. Marcus smiled proudly. "Sarah, that's exactly the kind of thing Margaret would have done. She always said that our pain doesn't have to be wasted if we use it to help others heal." "I've been thinking about your wife a lot lately," Sarah admitted. "I never got to meet her, but I feel like I know her through the way you talk about her and the way you live your life. She must have been an amazing person to have raised such kindness in you." Marcus was touched by Sarah's words. "She would have loved you, Sarah." Margaret always had a soft spot for people who were fighting to build better lives for themselves. 3 weeks after that first night in the park, Sarah received a call from Patricia at the Women's Center. A spot had opened up in the transitional housing program, and Sarah could move in whenever she was ready. That evening, As Sarah packed her few belongings, she found herself feeling unexpectedly emotional about leaving Marcus's house. The guest room that had been her sanctuary was about to become empty again, and she worried about Marcus being alone in the big house. "I'm going to miss having you here," Marcus said, as he helped her carry her bags to his truck. "The house is going to feel very quiet again." "I'm going to miss being here too," Sarah replied honestly. "This place saved my life, Marcus. Not just because you gave me shelter, but because you showed me that there are still good people in the world who will help others without expecting anything in return." "You gave me something too, Sarah," Marcus said thoughtfully. "These past few weeks, having you here has reminded me what it feels like to have family around again. I've enjoyed our dinners and conversations more than you know." As they drove to the transitional housing facility, Sarah looked out at the familiar streets they had traveled together many times over the past few weeks. She felt ready for this next step in her journey, but she also felt sad about leaving the safety and comfort of Marcus's home. The transitional housing facility was a large, converted house in a quiet neighborhood. Patricia met them at the front door and gave Sarah a tour of her new living space. The house was clean and well-maintained, with a common kitchen, living room, and laundry facilities. Sarah's bedroom was small but comfortable, with a single bed, a desk, and a small dresser. "Your housemates are all lovely women," Patricia explained. "Maria is a single mother who's going back to school to become a nurse. Janet is a widow who lost her home after her husband's medical bills depleted their savings. And Carmen is a young woman who aged out of foster care and is working to establish herself independently." Sarah felt nervous but excited about meeting these women who were fighting similar battles to rebuild their lives. She understood that each of them had their own story of loss and struggle, but also their own dreams for the future. After Patricia left, Marcus helped Sarah unpack her few belongings. As they arranged her clothes in the dresser, Sarah turned to him with tears in her eyes. "Marcus, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for me. You literally saved my life." Marcus pulled her into a fatherly hug. "Sarah, watching you rebuild your life has been one of the most inspiring things I've ever witnessed. You don't need to thank me. Just promise me you'll keep in touch and let me know how you're doing." "Of course I will. You're family now, Marcus. I hope you know that." As Marcus drove away that evening, Sarah stood at the window of her new room and watched his taillights disappear into the darkness. She felt a mixture of sadness and excitement about this new chapter of her life. For the first time in months, she felt truly hopeful about her future. Over the next few weeks, Sarah settled into her new living situation and continued to thrive at her job. Her freelance editing work was growing steadily, and she was saving money for her eventual move to her own apartment. She also began volunteering at the Women's Center on weekends, helping new clients navigate the same programs and resources that had helped her. Marcus called or texted Sarah almost every day, checking on her progress and offering encouragement. Sometimes he would pick her up for dinner at his house, and Sarah always looked forward to these visits. Their friendship had become one of the most important relationships in her life. One evening, as Sarah was working on a particularly challenging editing project, her housemate Maria knocked on her door. "Sarah, there's someone here to see you," Maria said with a strange expression on her face. Sarah went downstairs to find Jake standing in the living room, looking uncomfortable and out of place. She hadn't seen him since the day she had left his apartment, and her first instinct was to turn around and go back upstairs. "Sarah, please, can we talk?" Jake asked. "I've been looking for you for weeks." Sarah crossed her arms and stayed near the stairs, ready to escape if necessary. "What do you want, Jake?" "I want to apologize," he said, stepping toward her. "I made a huge mistake. I've been miserable since you left. I want you to come back home." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to come back? After what you did to me? After the things you said?" "I was angry and stupid," Jake said desperately. "I didn't mean any of those things. The other woman meant nothing to me. You're the one I love, Sarah. I realize that now." Sarah felt a flash of her old self. The woman who would have been tempted to believe his words and go back to the familiar life she had known. But then she thought about everything she had accomplished in the past month and a half. She thought about her job, her growing freelance business, her volunteer work, and most importantly, the strength she had discovered within herself. "Jake," she said calmly, 5 weeks ago, you threw me out of your apartment with nothing but the clothes on my back. You told me I was stupid for thinking you would ever marry someone like me. You said I was just convenient until you found someone better. Jake winced at his own words. I didn't mean that, Sarah. I was just angry. Maybe you were angry. But people's true feelings often come out when they're angry, Sarah replied. Those words came from somewhere real inside you. And you know what? I'm actually grateful you said them. Because they forced me to realize that I deserve better. Please, Sarah, just give me another chance. I'll prove to you that I've changed. Sarah shook her head firmly. I don't want you to prove anything to me, Jake. I don't want to be with someone who thinks I'm just convenient until something better comes along. I want to be with someone who sees my worth and never makes me question it. But we were together for 2 years, Jake protested. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It means I wasted 2 years with someone who didn't value me, Sarah said simply. But it also means I learned what I don't want in a relationship. I'm not angry with you anymore, Jake. But I'm not coming back either. I'm building a new life. And there's no place in it for someone who treated me the way you did. Jake tried to argue with her for a few more minutes. But Sarah remained firm in her decision. Finally, he left. And Sarah went back upstairs, feeling stronger than she had ever felt in her life. That night, she called Marcus to tell him about Jake's visit. I'm proud of you, Sarah, Marcus said when she finished her story. It takes real strength to walk away from the familiar, even when the familiar wasn't good for you. I couldn't have done it without everything I've learned these past few weeks, Sarah admitted. Meeting you showed me what real kindness looks like. Working at the construction office showed me I can support myself. Volunteering at the Women's Center showed me that I have something valuable to offer other people. Jake was offering me a return to being dependent on someone who didn't respect me. I want so much more than that now. You deserve so much more than that, Marcus agreed. And Sarah, you're going to find it. I have no doubt about that. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the doorway of her own apartment, holding the keys in her hand with a sense of pride and accomplishment she had never felt before. The one-bedroom apartment wasn't large or luxurious, but it was hers. She had earned it through her hard work at the construction office, her growing freelance editing business, and careful budgeting. Marcus arrived with a truck full of furniture that Sarah had slowly purchased over the past few months. I still can't believe you're really moving into your own place, he said, carrying in a small dining table. It seems like yesterday that I found you shivering in the park. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago, and sometimes it feels like yesterday to me too, Sarah replied, directing him where to place the table. But I know I'm not the same person I was that night. The transformation in Sarah was remarkable. She carried herself with confidence now, and her eyes held a strength that hadn't been there before. Her job at the construction office had led to a promotion to office manager, with a significant increase in pay. Her freelance editing business had grown through word-of-mouth recommendations, and she now had regular clients who provided her with steady additional income. More importantly, Sarah had discovered a passion for helping other women who found themselves in situations similar to what she had experienced. Her volunteer work at the Women's Center had evolved into a part-time paid position as a peer counselor, helping new clients navigate the programs and resources available to them. I have something for you, Marcus said, pulling a small wrapped package from his jacket pocket. A housewarming gift. Sarah opened the package to find a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm in the shape of a guardian angel. Marcus, it's beautiful. I saw it and thought of you, Marcus explained. You've become a guardian angel for so many women at the center, helping them find their way to safety and independence. Sarah fastened the bracelet around her wrist, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. You know, I sometimes wonder what would have happened to me if you hadn't decided to walk through the park that night. I think about that too, Marcus admitted. But I also think that someone with your strength and determination would have found a way to survive and thrive eventually. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time to help speed up the process. As they finished arranging furniture, Sarah's phone rang. It was Patricia from the Women's Center. Sarah, I'm sorry to bother you on your moving day, but we have a situation here. A young woman came in this morning who reminds me a lot of you when you first arrived. She's been sleeping in her car for a week, and she's terrified and doesn't know where to turn. She's specifically asked to speak with someone who has been through a similar experience. Would you be able to come in today? Sarah looked around her new apartment, thinking about all the unpacking she still needed to do. Then she thought about herself 6 months ago, desperate and alone, and how much Patricia's kindness had meant to her. Of course, Sarah said without hesitation. I'll be there in an hour. Marcus overheard the conversation and smiled proudly. Go, he said. I can finish unpacking. This is more important. At the Women's Center, Sarah met with a 20-year-old woman named Emily, who had been kicked out of her family home after coming out as gay. Emily's story was different from Sarah's in the details, but the emotions were heartbreakingly familiar. The fear. The shame. The sense of having nowhere to turn. I don't know how I'm going to survive, Emily said through tears. I have a high school diploma but no job experience. I've been living in my car, but I'm almost out of gas money, and I don't know what I'm going to do when winter comes. Sarah listened with the same patience and compassion that Marcus had shown her. Emily, 6 months ago, I was sleeping on a park bench because I had nowhere else to go. Today, I moved into my own apartment. I'm not telling you this to minimize what you're going through, but to show you that your current situation is not permanent. How did you do it? Emily asked desperately. How did you get from where I am now to having your own place? One day at a time, Sarah explained. And with the help of good people who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. The first step is getting you into safe housing. Then we work on the job situation. Then we start building your independence step by step. Sarah spent the next 2 hours with Emily, walking her through the same programs and resources that had helped her. She gave Emily her phone number and promised to check on her regularly. Why are you helping me? Emily asked as they finished their conversation. You don't even know me. Sarah smiled, remembering asking Marcus the same question 6 months ago. Because someone helped me when I needed it most. And he taught me that's how the world gets a little bit better. We help each other. That evening, Marcus came to Sarah's new apartment for dinner. She had prepared a simple meal, but she had set the table with her new dishes and lit candles to celebrate her first night in her own home. This feels like a real celebration, Marcus said, looking around the cozy apartment. You should be proud of everything you've accomplished. Sarah, I am proud, Sarah said. But I'm also grateful. I know that not everyone who finds themselves in the situation I was in gets the kind of help you gave me. I was lucky. It wasn't just luck, Marcus pointed out. You worked incredibly hard to rebuild your life. You could have given up dozens of times, but you didn't. During dinner, Sarah shared with Marcus her growing dream of eventually going back to school to get a degree in social work. I want to do this work professionally, she said. I want to help women who are in crisis situations, and I think my own experience gives me insights that could be valuable. I think that's a wonderful goal, Marcus said supportively. Have you looked into programs? I've been researching schools that offer evening and weekend classes for working adults. It would take me longer to finish the degree, but I could keep working while I study. I've even found a few scholarship programs specifically for people who have overcome difficult circumstances. Marcus raised his glass of water in a toast. To Sarah, who turned the worst night of her life into the foundation for helping others. As they clinked glasses, Sarah felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this moment. Marcus, I have something I want to tell you. What's that? When I asked you that night to stay if you were going to help me, I was asking for protection from the world. But what you gave me was so much more than that. You gave me the tools to protect myself. Marcus looked puzzled. I'm not sure I understand. You didn't just give me a place to stay that night, Sarah explained. You showed me what it looks like when someone believes in your worth even when you can't see it yourself. You helped me find a job, but more importantly, you helped me discover that I was capable of working hard and succeeding. You never made me feel like a charity case or like I owed you something. You made me feel like I deserved help simply because I was human. Sarah paused, gathering her thoughts. Because of the way you treated me, I learned to treat myself with respect. I learned to set boundaries with people like Jake, who don't value me. I learned that I have something valuable to offer the world. You didn't just guard me from danger that night, Marcus. You helped me learn to guard myself." Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. "Sarah, watching you grow and become the strong, independent woman you are now has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. Margaret would have been so proud of you. I wish I could have met her," Sarah said softly. "But in a way, I feel like I know her through the kindness you showed me. Her values live on in the way you treat other people." As the evening went on, they talked about their plans for the future. Marcus shared that Lisa, his daughter, was coming home for winter break and was excited to meet Sarah, whom he had told her so much about. Sarah talked about her goals for her counseling work and her educational plans. "I have one more surprise for you," Marcus said as they were cleaning up after dinner. He pulled out an envelope from his jacket. "This came for you at my house yesterday." Sarah opened the envelope to find an acceptance letter from the local university's social work program, along with notification that she had been awarded a partial scholarship based on her essay about overcoming adversity. "I can't believe it," Sarah said, reading the letter over and over. "I'm actually going to be able to go back to school. I can believe it," Marcus said. "You're one of the strongest, most determined people I've ever met. This is just the beginning of all the great things you're going to accomplish." Later that evening, after Marcus had gone home, Sarah sat in her living room in her own apartment, looking at her acceptance letter and thinking about the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought about Emily, the young woman she had counseled that afternoon, and all the other women who would need help in the future. She picked up her phone and sent Marcus a text. "Thank you for showing me that guardian angels sometimes come in the form of ordinary people who choose to do extraordinary things." Marcus replied immediately, "Thank you for showing me that sometimes the people we're meant to help end up helping us just as much." 1 year later, Sarah was working toward her social work degree while continuing her job at the construction office and her counseling work at the Women's Center. She had helped dozens of women transition from crisis situations to independence, and many of them stayed in touch to share their successes and challenges. Marcus attended Sarah's birthday party at her apartment, along with several of the women Sarah had helped, her co-workers from the construction office, and Lisa, who was now home from college, and had become like a sister to Sarah. "I want to make a toast," Sarah said, raising her glass as everyone gathered in her small living room. "1 year ago, I thought my life was over. I was alone, homeless, and convinced that I had no value. But this room is full of people who have shown me that we're never really alone, and that our value isn't determined by our circumstances." She looked at Marcus, who was standing near the window with Rex at his side. "Marcus, you taught me that sometimes the most important thing we can do for another person is to see their potential even when they can't see it themselves. You didn't just save my life that night. You helped me build a life worth saving." The room erupted in applause, and Marcus wiped away tears as he walked over to give Sarah a hug. "I'm proud of you, Sarah. But more than that, I'm proud to call you family." As the evening went on, Sarah found herself thinking about that night in the park when she had asked Marcus to guard her if he was going to stay. She realized now that the best kind of protection isn't being shielded from the world's challenges, but being given the tools and confidence to face those challenges with strength. Emily, the young woman Sarah had counseled on her moving day, was now living independently and working as a veterinary assistant while taking classes to become a veterinary technician. She had become one of Sarah's closest friends and often helped with new clients at the Women's Center. "Sarah," Emily said as the party was winding down, "I was wondering if you could help me with something." "Of course. What is it?" "There's a 16-year-old girl who just aged out of foster care, and she's been staying at the emergency shelter. She reminds me a lot of myself when I first came to the center. Would you be able to meet with her tomorrow?" Sarah smiled, thinking about the chain of kindness that had started with Marcus's decision to help a stranger in the park. "Absolutely. Let's set up a meeting." As her guests left that evening, Sarah stood in her doorway saying goodbye, surrounded by the warmth and love of the chosen family she had built. Marcus was the last to leave, and as he hugged her goodbye, he whispered, "Margaret would be so proud of the woman you've become." "I hope someday I can be half the person she was," Sarah replied. "You already are," Marcus said with certainty. "You've taken your pain and transformed it into purpose." That's exactly what she would have done. After everyone had gone home, Sarah sat in her quiet apartment, looking at the photographs on her walls that documented her journey over the past year. There was a picture of her graduation from the transitional housing program, photos from various celebrations with the women she had helped, and a framed copy of her acceptance letter to the social work program. But her favorite picture was one that Marcus had taken on her moving day, showing her standing in the doorway of her apartment holding her keys, with a look of pure joy and accomplishment on her face. Below the picture, she had written a quote that had become her personal motto. "Sometimes, our greatest challenges become our greatest gifts to others." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from the Women's Center. A new client had just arrived, a woman who had been living in her car with her 2 young children. The message asked if Sarah could come in early the next morning to meet with her. Without hesitation, Sarah replied that she would be there. As she got ready for bed, she thought about the woman and her children who were probably scared and desperate. Much like she had been that night in the park, she felt a familiar sense of purpose and determination. Knowing that tomorrow, she would have the chance to be someone's guardian angel, just as Marcus had been hers. Sarah understood now that the most beautiful thing about receiving help when you need it most is that it teaches you how to give that same help to others. The kindness Marcus had shown her hadn't just changed her life, it had created ripples that would continue to spread, touching the lives of countless others who needed to know that they were worth saving. As she turned off the lights in her apartment, Sarah whispered a prayer of gratitude for the cold October night when a stranger had chosen to see her worth when she couldn't see it herself. That night had taught her that guardian angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they just have kind hearts and the courage to act on their compassion. The bracelet Marcus had given her caught the moonlight streaming through her bedroom window. And Sarah smiled as she drifted off to sleep, knowing that tomorrow would bring another opportunity to be the light in someone else's darkness, just as Marcus had been the light in hers.